Would you lead us in the pledge, sir?
Would everyone rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Our first order of business is to approve the consent agenda, where we have 4 items: the minutes from November 23rd, the appointment of one ABC representative, modification of the budget ordinance, and the appointment of our representatives to the Triangle J Council of Governments Board. Any changes, additions, deletions to the consent agenda? Comments from the board? If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. The consent agenda is approved. Brings us to our organizational meeting, installation of mayors and commissioners. Clerk?
Repeat after me. I, Cindy S. Perry, do solemnly affirm that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of my office as mayor of the town of Pittsburgh,
as mayor of the town of Pittsburgh.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you. I've asked if I could take a moment of personal privilege to just give some thanks to people who are here and who have been here for me for quite some time. My family, my friends, acquaintances, and it's just wonderful to see a lot of you here tonight. So I thank you for coming and enjoying this moment. I laughed just a little bit about the fact that when I came back from the Board of Elections to file for mayor, I told Dan that I had done it, and he was just absolutely delighted. And I hope he remains that way for the next 2 years. And to my fellow board members, I must say that last week I went to new mayor's school. Did you know that we had such a thing? And discerned that there are a tremendous number of mayors who have previously served on the town council. And I don't have that benefit, but I just want to assure you all that I look forward to being with you, united in the vision to do what's best for Pittsburgh, and united together as we move forward in this next 2-year period. I'm very confident that staff will be by our side. I've been so impressed over the last little while. You know, if you look at the calendar, this board meets twice a month, but let me assure you that behind the scenes there is a tremendous amount more going on. I've been to more meetings lately, and I haven't until tonight been sworn in. So it's just amazing that there is such diligent work that's going on behind the scenes that the ordinary citizen of Pittsburgh may not know about. And speaking of people who do extraordinary things, Kay Judge is with us tonight, and Kay has something that she wanted to present to me as the new mayor and the town board. And Kay, if you'd come forward and tell us what you have.
I have a Pittsburgh map. This is a project that I've worked on for about a year, and when I I got it today. It's been printed today. And when I came in, I showed it to some people on the back row, and they have already found ways to improve it. But at any rate, I wanted to present this to Cindy because we've known each other for longer than either one of us probably wants to tell you. And I would like to read from the back of it where I tell why I did this map. This Pittsboro map brochure is meant to be a guide to current places of interest and to direct attention to places in Pittsboro's historic past that bring significance to the current vitality and spirit of our town. Keeping our history before us builds pride in preservation and a commitment to conserving our human and natural resources. We value the past that leads us forward into treasuring a good life for us all here. The best to everyone. And I hope you'll enjoy the map. Most of you know that I'm very interested in history, and I think that is very important to know. And one of the features of the map is a painting that Miss Annie Bynum did. Well, she did it when she was in her 90s. But she painted Pittsboro the way she remembered it as a child in the early 1900s. And so we've got the blend of the current with the past.
Thank you so much, Kay. And Kay has done a tremendous job with the Historical Association, and I'm just thrilled that she called me late this afternoon to ask if she could make this presentation tonight. And I'm just thrilled that she did. So thank you all for your patience and your interest and onward.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do all of you together. Solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as Commissioner of the Town of Pittsboro. So help me God. Congratulations.
Our first order of business is for the board to choose the mayor pro tem. Do I have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate
Sam Baldwin. Seconded by Michael Fiocco. Very good. Those in favor of Pamela Baldwin serving as mayor pro tem, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you so much. Now we need to present the agenda to be set. We have a ceremonial agenda and a regular meeting agenda. And first, can we ask for approval for the ceremonial agenda? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. First part of our ceremonial agenda is a resolution honoring Bill Terry, Mayor of Pittsboro. Whereas the town of Pittsboro is always appreciative of those who serve for the betterment of the town, and whereas William G. Bill Terry served the town of Pittsboro as town manager from October 1, 2007 to September 30th, 2013, and as mayor from December 2013 to December 2015. And whereas Bill Terry rendered during his term of office valuable service to the town of Pittsboro and the citizens thereof, and whereas he served as the town representative on the Chatham County Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors and on the North Carolina Certified Retirement Community Committee. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the town of Pittsboro, North Carolina, that deep gratitude and appreciation are expressed to William G. Bill Terry for his leadership and dedicated service to the citizens of Pittsboro as the mayor of Pittsboro from 2013 to 2015. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be made a part of the permanent records of the town of Pittsboro, and a copy thereof, which has been duly executed by the mayor and town clerk, be presented to William Bill Terry. Mr. Terry. Resolution of appreciation, whereas the Board of Commissioners of the town of Pittsboro, North Carolina, wishes to acknowledge and express appreciation to Beth Turner for her dedicated service to the citizens of Pittsboro, and whereas Beth Turner was elected to a seat on the town board, where she dutifully served from 2011 to 2015, and whereas she served as the town's representative on the Chatham County Solid Waste Advisory Board, and whereas she has served in many other civic and charitable endeavors seeking to make the town of Pittsboro a better place to live and work. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the town of commissioners of the town of Pittsboro, North Carolina, that deep gratitude and sincere appreciation are expressed to Beth Turner for her leadership and dedicated service to the citizens of Pittsboro as a member of the Board of Commissioners from 2011 to 2015. Be it resolved that a copy of this resolution be made a part of the permanent record of the town of Pittsboro, and a copy thereof, which has been duly executed by the mayor and town clerk, be presented to Beth Turner. Adopted this 14th day of December, and I just realized my Robert's rules have failed me, and that I forgot to ask the board to join in voting for the resolution for Mayor Terry, and let's do this one together as a board.
So moved that we approve both resolutions.
Excellent. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, Beth. We have one person signed up for Citizen Matters, and that is Randolph Bowler. Mr. Bowler.
Thank you, Mayor Perry. I have to get used to that. Mayor Terry to Mayor Perry. Given that the board is meeting once in December, and then I think you're going to hit the ground running, I just have some items that kind of go back in the 8 years I was on the board and probably the 2 years that Mayor Terry led the board. The installation of a new board is exciting. I provided these materials for you, and it does begin a journey over the next few years. Given that 2016 is around the corner with a potential upcoming winter retreat, I respectfully offer a few items as a former board member that I believe should be considered for fiscal year 2016 and beyond. And I can't take credit for a number of these. Some of these Mayor Davini used to bring forward, some of these Max Cotton used to bring forward, and some of these the board discussed in the past. But one, the town should benchmark its budget and compensation for its board members against similar municipalities in the Triangle J region and adjust its budgets accordingly for the managing board and perhaps the staff. We did that when Mr. Terry was the manager. There was a long period of time where it hadn't been done, and I think with the amount of work that you're going to do, it would be a disservice to not continually benchmark that. 2, the town should consider appointing an annexation task force to make recommendations to the town board regarding potential future voluntary annexations into the town of Pittsboro and areas where it may make sense to close donut holes or gaps within the current town boundary. Of course, we all know that the state law has changed on involuntary and voluntary annexations, but if you look at the map of Pittsboro, which I know that current Mayor Perry did when she ran, there's an awful lot of strange donut holes and situations that probably would make sense to have a task force, which we've discussed in the last 10 years but never got done. And now might be the time to explore that. 3, the town should consider appointing a task force regarding elections and the composition of the town board. More specifically, with future growth, the town may need to split into 2 precincts, East and West Pittsboro, should evaluate the merits of adding an extra board member and thus creating a 7-member board with a vote for its presiding officer, the mayor. And if the board expands, whether it makes sense and is good public policy to have some board members elected from a district and others at large. Again, this is something that has come up over time, and it may be a good time to explore it and get input. 4, the town should request that Chatham County purchase its potable water and connect to all points in and around town, especially the south. I know that every year I brought this up, but at some point it would be good if the county were to fill the gap where we lost selling water to the chicken plants. It's not only good economic sense, but if you talk to your engineer and the folks that run the system, that amount of water flow that we lose actually contributes to poor water quality by not flowing that hundreds of thousands of gallons through the system. And I provided a couple sample letters that, again, you can make them how you want, but I think hitting the ground running on that would be good. If you look at your enterprise fund, it's close to a $300,000 delta. 5, the town should send a letter to the Economic Development Corporation in Chatham County supporting the notion of a municipal fund that is a budget item in the county's budget and supports projects in Goldston, Siler City, and Pittsboro. Mayor Perry heard me give the presentation to the EDC, with Mayor Terry was there as well. They want to appoint an infrastructure subcommittee. Current county chairman, who was just re-elected tonight, and Diana Hales is now the vice chair, likes that idea, but they want to get input from the town. So essentially, if the county were to do such a thing, Siler City, Pittsboro, and Goldston would have a little extra money to do the kind of projects that always come up that you never seem to have the money to do, like, for instance, that water project on West Street, where it was kind of a reach. 6, the town should request a joint meeting with the county to discuss among a long list of items how to fund and implement the downtown revitalization plan. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of other items on that list, but I don't remember the last time we met, and probably Mr. Messick and Alice can correct me, but I think it was when I was first elected mayor, and we met when the board was, Mr. Morgan was the chairman, and that is 9 years ago, coming on 10 years, when we actually had an openly advertised joint meeting, not a meeting where we meet through the EDC, that kind of thing. And given that the county just approved in its consent agenda redoing their building downtown, and on the revitalization plan it mentions perhaps eliminating that building, I think having this meeting sooner than later would be good. 7, the town should correspond with the EDC to recommend and or appoint representatives to serve on the EDC's infrastructure subcommittee. Obviously, the mayor typically is appointed to the board, but you may have an opportunity to appoint some other members from your board or from staff to serve on that infrastructure committee that they're wanting to put together. 8, the town should consider monitoring water quality and flow in the Haw River, Robertson Creek, Turkey Creek, and Stinking Creek, as well as some of the other blue line streams in its corporate limits and ETJ. Given the amount of growth that you're going to foresee, and this is an idea that people have proposed over time, it might be wise to explore that notion before it's too late to kind of know what the baseline is now. And 9, the town should reevaluate whether it needs to stay in the rural planning organization or move to the metropolitan planning organization. That item has come up at least 3 times in the past, but whether we belong to the RPO or the MPO, is something that we need to understand what best helps the town with its transportation and transit needs. Michael, I think, is currently the representative with TARPO, and you can speak to that, but that's something that you may want to consider. I left you some copies of the resolution I brought to the EDC on the municipal fund and some sample letters that I'll send over that you can look at. The reason I came here tonight is you don't typically meet again in December. The EDC probably will meet before you meet again, and some of these things, if you have a consensus on a letter that your mayor and town manager can sign, you might want to move on it, because if you wait, then you're already into February and March. Thank you very much, Mayor Perry.
Thank you, former Mayor Fuller. The next part of our agenda is the regular meeting agenda, old and new business. Do I have a motion to approve that agenda? So moved. Second. Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The first order of business is to review the Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, which is a draft module. Roger Walden is standing in the doorway waiting to give us a look at this monumental document that we received just a couple of days ago.
Yes.
We have not absorbed it all at this point, so can you highlight it for us, Roger?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me here, and welcome to this new Board of Commissioners, Mayor. We're looking forward to working with you as this UDO progresses. Yes, this document here is, I guess you could say, hot off the presses. And the purpose of tonight is not to discuss it, but I wanted to take this opportunity to present it to you and to set the context for it, and to suggest some process to go forward from here with review and discussion of it. So I wanted to highlight just a couple of key things about it, and then suggest some next steps. So thank you for allowing me to do this. And so I'm going to be three parts of my presentation. I'm going to just be doing a reminder to everybody about the project, about the creation of this Unified Development Ordinance, and where we are in the process of doing that. Then I'm going to say a couple of things about this Module 1, and so to kind of help kickstart everybody's review as they begin to look at it and prepare for discussion of it, and then talk about next steps. So that's where we are. This is the step, by the way, and thank you for the introduction. I'm Roger Walden. I'm with Clarion Associates. The town has retained our services to consolidate a number of your ordinances that are now in separate places, modernize, and come up with a new Unified Development Ordinance that will work for the town and based on best practices. So where we are in the process, there was an initial project initiation and scoping. A technical committee was assembled, and the first product that came out of this was a code assessment that we presented to the town board and the community earlier this year, and that suggested what we saw as needing attention in your current array of ordinances, and making suggestions for how a new Unified Development Ordinance might be structured. And what we said in that code assessment was that we would we suggested coming to you in two modules. Module 1 that focused on the procedures, administration, zoning districts, and some of the use regulations, and then Module 2, which will focus more on standards, open space, environmental protection. Also in Module 2, I heard I've already been talking about your downtown town center. Also in Module 2 is suggestions for consideration of a form-based district, another way of looking at development regulations for your town center. And then following all of that and public comment, your comments, revisions of it, then we move on to public hearing. So that's the process where we are, and we're right now at the point in red with the looking at just beginning our review with you of Module 1. These are the 7 things that were listed in the code assessment as things that we would suggest being targets for attention in developing this Unified Development Ordinance. Improving user friendliness, improving procedural efficiencies, looking at your plan development regulations, looking at downtown character, gateways, modernizing the zoning districts and how you establish the standards, promoting conservation of natural resources, and improving development quality overall. So those were the what we presented to you earlier this year as the main targets that would be informing our work on this UDO, and that's what we've been doing. So the other thing that I wanted to mention to you is that there is a project website that has been up since we presented the code assessment, and I wanted to highlight that again tonight, and so that everybody here and those following can know that it exists. We've got this project website that has information about the UDO, about the process, about where we are, about interim products that will be posted up there. One of the things that we have on there is that middle frame is these. By the way, these are clips from the UDO website itself. And the address is pretty easy to understand. I'm glad we got that. Glad we got that name for the website of PittsburghUDO.com. And if you go to it there, you'll see for example, this document and the memoranda that we present you tonight and this presentation tonight. And also on there is that box to the right that's called Get Involved. I just wanted to highlight that for a second because there are the website does offer an additional opportunity for people to be involved and offer opinions. It has a place where there's a survey that people can respond to it with their questions and comments. They can offer whatever comments they want. We invite people to give us their mailing addresses so we can be sending updates as they go on and so on. That site has been up. We had about maybe 30 people that visited it and gave us their email addresses already and offered us some comments, which we were thinking about as we went through this, and hoping that now as we launch our public discussion of this module, that will be an important part of the community engagement. Okay. I want to say a little bit about Module 1. Mayor, as you pointed out, it's thick. It's a lot of pages here, and this is one of 2 modules, but this is a second one won't be quite this thick, but there's a lot in here. As we said in the code assessment, we're proposing that there be 10 articles in this new UDO, and that it combines together your current zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, flood damage prevention ordinance, riparian buffer protection ordinance, stormwater management, lighting, and utility specifications. So all that's going to be pulled together and coordinated in this one unified development ordinance. Those are the 10 articles. For this first module, those items I've just listed, shown in black, is what is included in this module. Articles 1, 2, 3, and 6 through 10, which again, as I mentioned, focus on general provisions, establish the zoning districts, have some administrative items dealing about review authorities, dealing with nonconformities. A very important article here that I want to particularly call everybody's attention to as we go forward in discussion is procedures, because we are suggesting some changes and adjustments to the procedures that you currently have in place for Pittsborough's administration of these regulations. The general approach to all of this, and again, I just wanted to give you an overview. Our general approach to putting together this Module 1 draft is first, we wanted to take what you have in your existing ordinances and things that are working well now, carry them forward. So don't try to fix something that's broken. Then some things that are maybe, in our opinion, a little bit broken right now and could use adjustment. We've made adjustments. But then also we are suggesting some new provisions and new elements that you haven't had before. So that's the general approach. That third dash under the general approach is kind of critical footnotes. There's a lot of material in here, and I think that our experience has been in working with other communities that it really helps to have footnotes in these drafts to say what has changed. So if there's a new section or something that's just been carried forward from before or something that's changed, there are footnotes. There are 300 footnotes in the document, but they just help the reader understand this proposed module and what's in here and why. So that's the footnotes. I mentioned to you focus on procedures. That's that's something that we highlighted in our code assessment presentation to you. In our opinion, and this is just our opinion, so it's a recommendation, and you can be taking it and working on it, and citizens offering your comments. Looking at your procedures compared with most other communities and best practices, our recommendation is that you delegate some approval authority. One of the classic examples is a final plat approval, where somebody comes in for an application for a subdivision. They do a preliminary plat, goes through the planning board, comes to you, and then you make a decision, yes or no, with conditions. And then there is the preparation of a final plat. In almost every community I'm aware of, a final plat then is reviewed and approved by staff. Because it's saying, did you draw the line here? Did you write this note here that you were supposed to? As opposed to in Pittsburgh, where the town board has to approve a final plat and the mayor has to sign it. So that's that's just an example of the kind of thing that we are suggesting you delegate to staff. We have included in here some provisions for flexibility and adjustment. It makes sense to have hard and fast rules, but also allow within established parameters some flexibility. I'll offer you an example. If there is a block of houses in town that was established before the current regulations, and maybe they're set closer to the road than the current regulations would require, and there's a vacant lot. Probably doesn't make sense to make that new house on the vacant lot be pushed way back. You ought to be able to have some flexibility to allow it to align with the other houses and be consistent with the character. That's the kind of thing we've included in here. Making processes throughout more consistent and predictable. We've got that in there. And consolidate and updating the definitions. Very important. Your current regulations have sometimes you have the definition in the definition section. Sometimes you have the definition in the standards, and we pull all that together. So we've got a common set of definitions, and we also included some new definitions. So, for example, you already have a definition for urban agriculture, but a lot of communities do, and so and that's the kind of thing that we've added in and with a footnote. Next thing, under adjusting the uses, introducing some new use types like urban agriculture. Adjusting what is a permitted use and what is a special use. That's something that we're going to want to highlight with you and talk about in some detail. Offer you an example of something that currently is a special use that in our opinion shouldn't be. Building 2 or 3 townhouses anywhere in town needs a special use permit, and that we're suggesting that be adjusted so that something like that could be allowed as a permitted use and go through as a site plan with a special use. On the other side, you've got a couple of things that are permitted that we are suggesting you might want to consider to be special uses. And the one example is pocket neighborhoods, which is a use that's permitted by right that allows somebody to put 10 clustered houses on an acre of land by right and without the kind of discussion that special use procedure allows. So we made some suggestions there. And the last thing, on this slide, it's not the last thing, but the last thing on this slide, the definition of development. As you know, I was helping the town serving as your interim planning director this summer for a few months while you were hiring a new planning director, and this is one that I experienced firsthand. That it's not exactly clear in your current regulations when you need a permit, when you don't. What kind of land disturbance or clearing of vegetation requires a permit, what doesn't. So we've got a definition in here about what's development, and it's basically any land disturbance, major clearing of vegetation, alteration of topography, in addition to construction of structures. So that's an important change that I just wanted to highlight. So that's just a sampling as a teaser, I think, of what we want to do. This is I want to close here with just an example. Every zoning district in this new UDO will have a double-page spread. And so I just happen to pick one out here for the R15 zoning district, residential, it's a low-density residential district. And that's a zoning district that you have right now that's being carried forward into the new one. It seems to be working pretty well. So, but this double-page spread offers an example of how we present the information for every zoning district. So we've got one of these double-page spreads for each one. each one starts out with a statement of purpose, and then has a couple of photographs of what is a typical development for that would be expected in that zone. Then has specific numbers, minimum lot size, setbacks, height, that kind of thing. Then it also has a three-dimensional sketch that, again, shows what is a typical kind of development in that zoning district. And you might see those little red dots there. Those refer to the little red dots on the left page where you're talking about setback. It tells you how to measure a setback or height and so on. And then it has references to other portions of the ordinance that have more detailed standards. And then the last thing, as I mentioned, there are footnotes throughout this. So there would be, on each of these double-page spreads, there would be footnotes about what has been carried forward and what has changed. So that's how that's laid out. So here it is. It's on the web. You have copies, and we're hoping that people will take a look and start the dialogue. Our suggestions for the next steps: publicize, starting with tonight, the availability of the document and the website and ways to get more information. We would like to do a similar briefing like I'm giving you right now to your planning board next time it meets, which would be in January. Then we're going to be working with your staff, really rolling up the sleeves and going over the details of this. There is a technical committee that has been assembled for the code assessment. We'll go back and meet with them. The big thing, our suggestion is that you consider scheduling a joint work session, be a full evening, of the town board of commissioners and the planning board, where we can really be getting into some detail about some of these provisions and getting your reactions and suggestions. A public information meeting is key to, again, publicize it and offer a venue. And we'll be working with your staff to find a venue at a time in January to do that, to be presenting this and have opportunity for questions and comments. Then we will be gathering feedback and making revisions, and then starting with Module 2, doing something very similar. And then following all of that, later this spring, early summer, we would be in a position to have all those revisions made and then have a public hearing of the full UDO to bring forward for public hearing. Public information and public hearing. So that's what I have, and we are looking forward to this review with you. And there's some, I think there are a lot of things in here that people are really going to like, and some that I expect will be a little controversial. And so look forward to talking with you.
Thank you very much. And I particularly appreciate your footnotes. I have started through it and really appreciate the context in which that brings everything. Those of us who are new needed that. Thank you. Does the board have questions for Mr. Roger Walker?
No, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm hoping that you will be working with your manager and with the planning board and looking at the calendar and trying to set a time in January when you might be able to sit down together and we can get together with you.
Roger, one question. Will you be sending out emails notifying folks who have signed up
Yes.
about these meetings? That
Yes,
you
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. And encouraging other people to give us their emails too.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian Grisbeck, does that fall into scheduling from your standpoint, or is that something we need to discuss at this point?
Well, I was only, I was only looking at the agenda item tonight to schedule a winter retreat with the board, but there's no, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason why you couldn't discuss something in addition to that. The first thought I had was, as Mr. Walden was talking about, it was maybe for Mr. Jones and I to get offline and maybe see how we would want to work it with the planning board first and then circle back with you guys on it, if that's all right.
Very good. Thank you very much. Before we proceed to the new business, let me notice that there is with us tonight a scout, and I'm not sure if this particular scout is here to fulfill the requirements of a particular badge or what. Could you stand and tell us who you are?
My name is Connor Ward, and I'm here to listen and fulfill some requirements. So thank you for allowing me to sit down and talk.
Are you, what troop are you, 93?
Yeah, 93. Yep, right down the road.
Right.
from Pittsburgh.
We have the date on Wednesday to talk about this.
Pardon?
We have a date on Wednesday to talk about this.
I see. All right, under new business, the review of the site plan for the dental office building is next, and Jeff Jones will introduce us to that.
Thank you, Mayor, board members. What we have tonight for you is a site plan. It's SP 2015-04. It's for 360 West Street. The aerial photo, you can see that there's some existing townhomes to the rear of the site and an adjacent office building next to the driveway going off of West Street onto the location. This is the site plan. The site plan is for roughly 5,200 square foot office building that will serve as a dental office and be a split office building, and the remaining portion will be leased out to someone needing an office building. There are approximately 22 parking spaces on site. Kind of go through, this is the landscape plan. Everything in green is either trees or landscaping that will be provided with the site plan, and see some additional trees in the parking lot surrounding the parking lot and the building itself with some foundation landscaping. There is a connection from the existing sidewalk on West Street to the project, to the front door. The front door actually is this area where that sort of faces the parking lot, and the rear, but it's really not, doesn't appear to be the rear, faces West Street. That was one of the questions that planning board had. So we went over the elevations. The top right corner elevation is the view that one would see from the parking lot. If you go down the second row, the elevation that's to the left on the second row is the elevation that one would see from West Street. And then you get the various sides, and then another rendering of what the public entrance would appear from the parking lot. Planning board thought that this was generally a good location for infill, that the building fits in with the area. There was a question about impervious surface. This project has roughly 56% impervious surface. And I want to kind of give the board a little bit more understanding of how staff came up with this, with the impervious surface, and where we are with projects like this in town. Here's what we understand regarding stormwater and impervious surface and watersheds. The project is disturbing 21,550 square feet, which is less than a half acre. Half acre is 21,780. So they're under the threshold of the town's adopted stormwater regulations. Stormwater regulations are administered only if one disturbs more than a half acre of land. Additionally, the project is located within a protected water supply watershed, WS4, which is a protected area. Town's watershed overlay district requirements are not required for this project as well, because the project is disturbing less than an acre of land. The provisions of the ordinance shall apply. The provisions of the watershed ordinance apply to new development activities which require an erosion control plan that's in accordance with the state rules, state rules for new development activities when erosion control is required. The state requires erosion control for projects that disturb an acre or more. So this is not disturbing an acre or more. So water supply regulations do not kick into effect here either. However, the project is subject to the Chatham County Erosion Control Ordinance, which says that a project needs an erosion control permit from the county if they disturb 20,000 square feet or more. This being 21,550, they are subject to that, and that's a condition of approval for this plan moving forward. So it's a little quirky that it's an infill development that is sort of exempt from stormwater, the town stormwater regulations, because they're not disturbing more than a half acre. And it's exempt because they're not disturbing more than an acre from watershed regulations. So it's an infill project, and we may see more of these in the future. But as staff has seen it, I think we are requiring what we should for erosion control and any stormwater that this project may need. And the applicant is here if you have any questions for him or questions for me.
So this sounds like something that will be clarified in the UDO.
Well, there are some things that if the town, and these are questions that we will move forward with the UDO, if we want to require some adherence to do stormwater regulations when a project is less than a half acre in size but meets the Chatham County regulations to kick in to affect erosion control, then we need to add some language that says not adherence to the state regulations, but adherence to the locally adopted county regulations.
Right. And so it's a leftover from when we had the state doing erosion control for the town.
That's right.
Changed that to the county.
That's right.
And then created this inconsistency.
It really, as we described it in our meetings with staff, it's a loophole that's out there. And one that the UDO process could address if that's the desire of the board, for sure.
Other questions from the board?
I just have one that's kind of looking over that site. That was just be one entrance going into that area?
Yes, sir.
Off West Street?
It's off of West. There's a driveway sort of that goes back to the townhomes and to the other office building there. More of the driveway goes back to the townhomes. This site will have a driveway that connects to an entry off of this driveway. There's no new connection to West Street with this project.
Is it sufficient size-wise to handle the traffic?
I think it's going to be fine to handle the traffic for an office building of this size. 22 parking spaces at max for parking. The driveway there is a pretty substantial driveway back to the townhomes.
Mark Ashness is here with CE Group. If the board has any further questions, or Mark, if you wish to be heard on the matter.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark Ashness with the C Group. We've done the land planning and civil engineering for the project. I think Jeff has pretty much covered the issues. With the discussion about the access, we have looped our parking lot, so it's not like as you come in, you can have to back around. If you come in and park in a space, you can actually turn and loop through. So we have two accesses to that side street. The reason we elected to access here is there's some fairly steep slopes to the east or to the top of the page. There's also a lot of vegetation there, and so we felt like leaving that area undisturbed would be a good idea. Now, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Trey Adams is here with the Lundy Group, also the project developer. Thank you.
Mark, I've got just an observation and a question. One, I think there is a spot in that driveway that's not draining well now. I think the asphalt is torn up because of it. And I think with your design as shown, it's probably not going to solve that issue. I'm giving you a heads up that I think there's a point about the northeast corner of your driveway where the water's just going to sit. So it's something.
No, I appreciate that. One thing we tried to do also, if you look at the details of our plan, is our parking lot doesn't really spill into that driveway. This project will be participating in the maintenance of that road, so that you're going to see some other improvements associated with that. But our drainage is sort of graded to sort of sunk back internal. Does that make sense? And then wrap around the building. It's a very small site. In fact, it's a 12-inch line, which is about the smallest drainage pipe you would install under any condition for this project.
My question is, I see you're providing a sidewalk, but does that need from the front of the building back out to the sidewalk. Does that need to be an accessible route?
We don't believe so because of the topographic differential. We'll note that when we make the submission to Chatham County Inspections that's a waiver. The drive itself is steeper going up than what you could accommodate from a handicap. Of course, we have handicap parking in the lot,
right,
but still, nonetheless, we'll still have a pedestrian access to the street via that.
Great, thank you.
Does the board have other questions or have enough information for there to be a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much. Jim.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda is the review of lease agreement between the town and the mill, Chatham Mills Development Corporation. You have a copy of the lease in your agenda package, and Mr. Grisbeck, did you want to make any additions to what we've already read from Mr. Messick?
Yeah, I would just point out a couple of things. The attachment that you have in the lease agreement, which shows the space, the attachment for Exhibit A is I think a remnant from an older or original agreement, and the floor plan that I have up on the screen right now is more representative, or is representative of the current, and I can make copies for you if this is representative of how the current space is laid out. And I can show you some pictures here in a second, but the front door being here, the hallway here, and these would be, if you can picture the windows. The Hobbs space itself is on the Starlight Mead side of the Chatham Mills, the main Chatham Mills building, if you can picture that. When you walk through the front door, currently there's conference table over here. They currently have this as sort of a break area, storage area. This is copy area, and then there are workstations here, and then customer service station here. When you go through the archway, these are solid, I believe they're load-bearing walls, solid walls here. Go through the archway, and then there's workstations over here, and these are walled office areas. So this area, this representation here is different from what you have in the exhibit. I didn't notice that until that agreement went out, so I certainly apologize for that. Let me show you, if I could, a couple of other pictures. This would be I believe the back area. See the windows looking to the outside. And then the front door area. This is the reception area, the conference room area. This would be the front area again, looking over from the conference room tables. And as you can see, I believe Mr. Royal took these pictures, and so you can kind of see what the place looks like when they're in mid-operation. I don't think Fred gave them time to tidy up at all. But, and then these would be the solid office, those solid wall office areas with I believe they have another workstation right here. What I would envision doing is kind of rearranging this a little bit over here to have customer service area right here, keeping this area, the copy area, the same. Probably locate some of our network servers and other hardware in here. Some break, microwave, refrigerator area. We would largely look to maintain these workstations here. We would kind of continue with this space right in here, moving this over a little bit further and using this as more or less a dump table or drawing table or meeting area. And then we would be locating Mr. Poteet and Mr. Horn over on this side. probably walling up something similar to this over here, but probably not immediately. Mr. Jones and Mr. Royal would be over on this side. This is bookshelf area. These would continue to be windows. And so the space itself, with the main advantage of this space being that it's 2,200 square feet of essentially ready to move in space. There is, with this space in particular, with Hobbs currently occupying it, as some of you are probably aware, they are relocating to a new house over by Baptist Church, and they're looking to vacate the space. The termination of that agreement would be separate from the agreement that we would be reviewing here tonight. The hopes and dreams of the transition would be that Hobbs could be ready to vacate the space at the end of January at the earliest, at which point in time we would be able to do inspections. There are some things I think that with Hobbs that we would be able to keep, and we could certainly talk with that as far as maybe some of the work areas, but we haven't, and workstations, but we haven't really determined that. Some of the lighting, for example, are some things that they've contemplated leaving behind. The Chatham Mills facility as a whole, as many of you are aware, has common areas, restroom, common space, hallway, and things that need to be maintained. There's a fee that's written into this lease agreement that helps accommodate the maintenance of some of those common areas. It was relayed to me in my diligence that we need to make sure that these common areas continue to be maintained, and I think the magic in this is really going to happen when we do our as-is inspection and we go through the facility, not only the space that Hobbs is currently occupying, but also the common area space, and we try to identify some things that do need to be upfit and maintained, and at the owner's expense. But again, it's again part of the diligence and part of the fun, I think, of transitioning to new office space. To revisit and start from scratch, and I think you guys are aware of the need to do all of this. Back in 2013, we brought on an engineer anticipating additional development conversations. Mr. Royal was subsequently hired. We found space to accommodate Mr. Royal and also Mr. Horn and Mr. Bass at the time, the planner and parks planner. Since that time, we've become even busier, and Chatham Park and other development projects have moved forward. Larger, higher altitude conversations about infrastructure, development of our planning infrastructure as well, as far as our UDOs, things like additional elements that are associated with Chatham Park, development agreements, small area plans. All of those things require people. It requires space to do it, and currently, as you're probably aware, we lack space to be able to handle those functions properly. Now, I do realize that as a whole, as the town expands and as the town grows, we're going to be pressing our limits as far as our existing space with admin staff, with the police department, very, very possibly with our other utilities as well. I think in the past few years, we've made great investments in terms of the water treatment plant, the wastewater plants, and we've been able to help those facilities along. Obviously, our utilities building is something that we don't think of every day, but I can assure you that facility will need some attention much sooner than later as well. This move, I think, has a benefit, a direct benefit to the utilities operations as well, and utilities building as well, in that Mr. Poteet would be moving his full-time office to this facility, locating some part-time space in the old building, but then allowing our utility supervisors to occupy the space that Mr. Poteet currently occupies to allow a bit more organization and planning, I think, on a day-to-day basis and a short-term basis over in the old facility. And I think that's a change that's been a long time coming. And I think one of the things that would be beneficial, not only for our new board members, but some of our experienced board members, is to take a look at that facility as well. And I think you could agree with me that we do need to make a few tweaks and improve on a good thing. This facility comes at the end of a few months of diligence. I worked with Diane Reed from the EDC to identify some other spaces. I think that the environment's changed a little bit since the last time I looked for space. Obviously, we were only looking for 3 or 4 people last time. Now we're looking for upwards of 8. The market's changed a little bit since then. It's now a bit more difficult to find competitively priced space for what we need to do. But I think the spatial needs are probably just as present as anything. I think with this move too, we wanted to raise the bar a little bit as far as how we presented the building to the public and how we presented the space to the public. And I think Hobbs has done a great job of keeping this space looking professional and forward thinking, and I think that's also the look that we want to give these departments, these functional areas. So I think that's a benefit. We needed to find sufficient parking, and I think we were able to do that with this lease agreement. We have parking for 8 employees plus additional spaces for customers. It is visible. Chatham Mills is, I think, an iconic building in the town of Pittsburgh that many people are familiar with for a variety of other needs. I think this only adds to the viability of the building overall and provides one more reason to go to it. I think most people can find Chatham Mills. I think, admittedly, the challenge may be for people to find our office at Chatham Mills, and so I think we're going to have to upgrade signage. And we've talked to Mr. Roberts about doing that upfit as well. Full accessibility, I think, is taken care of with this. We have 2 different areas for full ADA accessibility. On the upfit side, there may be a few tweaks Fred and I were talking about on the Starlight Beach side as far as the pavement. We're going to look to see what we can do about that, but that is certainly not a deal breaker in my mind. Conference area or meeting space, I think we have sufficient room for that. As you're aware, Chatham Mills has additional meeting space and convening space available, which I think is another bonus of this, and that if we do need to hold some events, I think the building provides some ability to do that. There's also storage available on site, so I think some of the day-to-day clutter that you might see, I think as long as we're able to utilize the storage space that's available in Chatham Mills and the secure storage space that's available in Chatham Mills, we should be able to keep the space relatively neat, while looking busy at the same time, of course. The term of the lease that we would be looking at is 3 years with flexibility for longer periods if necessary. Certainly if we come into a situation where we have to adjust that 1 year down, I think that's something that we could ask about as well. The lease is starting out at $2,500, which we have budgeted, plus the $175 per month for additional expenses. That figure, the $2,500 figure, would increase by 3% in subsequent years of the lease. I mentioned before that we would add additional signage to make sure that people can find it. And then last but not least, as I mentioned a little bit before, but I think we really need to stress and make part of the final decision is that we do need to complete our inspection of the facility before we assume it, so that we're making sure that we're assuming a building that contains no surprises, and that we're paying our fair share of the upfit, and the building owner is paying their fair share as well. So, I guess with that, I would open up for any questions, comments, or concerns that you as board members may have. It's something I think that we're really looking forward to move on. It's part of our evolution as a town, I think, and it's part of, I think, our ever needing to make sure that we're increasing not only the quality of our service, but the quality of our space as well, and I think we're accomplishing that here. With that, I will tap out.
Board question?
I'm just curious about what the shared common spaces are that you said the $175 a month fees. Was that like parking lots or other? What does that include?
Yeah, that's a good question. The restrooms. Now, this space right here does not have and I should have probably pointed that out. This does not have a restroom anywhere in these lines here. Nowhere in these lines will you see a restroom. The restroom is a common restroom where you go out of the door, you walk down this hallway over here. If this drawing were to continue, I believe the restrooms are just down the hallway and then to the left. So the common area would include the hallways and the restrooms. And so basically anything that the things that I would be paying close attention to would be anything that we would be affecting on a day-to-day basis, or anything our customers would be affecting on a day-to-day basis in particular. The restrooms are going to be a concern, and certainly if things aren't getting repaired in the hallway or any of the other areas that could otherwise be considered common, then it's certainly us not only to note that before we I was going to say take possession, but that's not really the legal term for it. Before we assume the lease, certainly those things have to be fixed. But as we go along, we have to keep an eye on it and make sure that we're vigilant about those things being fixed, so that we continue to put the best face on the facility for the public.
I have a question. The space that they have now, when does that lease expire?
Excuse me?
The one that they're in now?
The way we have it set right now is we're kind of tentatively shooting for the expiration of that to be March.
And so at that time, when you inspect the new one, you will indicate the amount in terms of the cost of upfitting it and all that. When will we have that estimate? When you go for your inspection?
Yeah, we have to, I think, in order to get a fair inspection, I mean, there's some things we could start working on right now as far as the hallway and the restroom. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't start certain aspects of that inspection, but I think complete spatial as-is inspection would have to begin when Hobbs moves out of the building at the end of January. So we would be looking to complete, I think we would be looking to be hard and heavy on that inspection probably that first week of February. And then from there determine what needed to be done, if anything, and then be ready to move in mid-February, late February, at the earliest.
Thank you.
I just have another question. I know this is a 3-year lease. I just wondered what your thoughts are about how long you think it'll be before we outgrow that space.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we need to do organizationally, and we're starting to look at this right now. One of the additional elements for Chatham Park gets into master facilities needs and staff needs. And we're starting to kind of, I think one of the comps, and it wasn't really Jeff that brought this forward, but it was actually Chatham Park that brought this forward. One of the comps that we're looking at is the town of Holly Springs, and how that curve kind of progressed as they grew. And I think for this 3-year period, the number of staff that we have available should be more than sufficient. I'm probably more concerned with how a search for a town hall and how construction of the town hall would proceed, and whether or not, to me, that would be the good problem to have, is if we were looking at having to move everything into a new town hall. But I think in terms of what we need to do and who we need to do it with, then I think the folks that we're going to be going to battle with it's going to be, we're going to be fine for the next 3 years. We'll probably be evaluating after that.
Well, I'm thinking about consolidating everybody as quickly as possible because I think it's a real need. I think there's a lot of benefit to the community to do that, and that's one reason that I would like for this lease to be a 2-year lease, like for us to be moving more quickly on that if we can, and I'm optimistic that we can. And so I'd like to explore that option if that's available. You had mentioned, Mr. Gruzbeck, that there's upfit contribution from the leaseor, and what is that?
That would be anything that we discover as part of our
fix.
Yeah, as part of the fix. Like if we say, for example, if we say the tiles in the bathroom need to be fixed, we had nothing to do. We haven't moved in yet. We had nothing to do with damaging those tiles. We think they should probably be fixed before they move in.
Well, along those lines, I think I know the asphalt to which you refer, and it's mud, and they are parking spaces that are right outside that door. People are going to use those, and they're going to walk into our space with mud feet. So I think that asphalt is a big repair item because right now it just doesn't look professional. Yeah. There's a clause in here about the fact that the tenant is going to be responsible for the HVAC. So I think we need to pay very close attention to the condition of that unit, and I would rather us not have the responsibility of replacing that unit, or at least having the owner replace the unit, and we can pay a pro rata share as additional rent for an estimated lifespan of that unit. But I don't think we should. We're in there for 2-3 years, buy a $12,000 HVAC unit, and contribute that to the enterprise. I think we should try to get a more equitable position there. And I guess I am kind of concerned about the accessible route and the accessibility. And primarily probably from the parking spaces to the building itself. And you had mentioned signage, so that may be the cure. It is having adequate signage.
I'm thinking, when I say accessibility, it's probably pretty easy, unfortunately, and I apologize to confuse what I mean by accessibility, because I could be talking about 2 different things. At the same time, accessibility in an ADA sense, and there's also accessibility in terms of visibility, which is probably a better way to describe it. So can someone coming into Pittsboro for the first time find Fred Royal, town engineer, and meet with him at his desk? That's kind of the concern that I have. And so, when finding Chatham Mills, getting to Chatham Mills, and then navigating the hallways in such a way that this meeting conversation takes place in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
Those are the sort of things I worry about.
Yeah, I'm referring to the former, the ADA compliance.
The ADA compliant, I think, is a little bit easier to solve, with the exception of the asphalt on the Starlight Meeting side.
Yeah.
That's I agree, something that needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Post haste.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to be an equal opportunity provider.
Yeah. I think that there's in no way means to, well, yeah, in the legal sense, we have accessibility. We have bare accessibility from the one side. From the Chatham Marketplace side, it is. I mean, someone could enter that side of the building barrier-free and make their way over to the building. But in order to maximize the property's use, I think it should be barrier-free on both sides of the building, because I think by and large, someone using our offices there more than once will be coming from that Starlight Mead side, and that should be barrier-free as well.
I think they've got some handicap designated parking spaces. So I think they're there, so on the, I guess, the south side of the building.
On the north side, I don't believe there is. I think there's a curb cut.
Yeah.
But there's no handicap space, parking spaces designated back there. There may be for the metering.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, on the other side of that
Exactly.
building, that
Right.
outbuilding.
Which, I don't know if they're designated solely for the metering or not, and I would think folks could be directed there and then directed back to, you know, the office space that we're talking about, so signage may help. And probably a silly question, but as well ask it, I'm assuming there's high-speed internet in that space? Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the first. I mean, you know, Hobbs, they're data hogs. I mean, that was the first thing that I asked about, and I almost really didn't even need to ask it. I mean, what they do is very data intensive, sharing information with clients and so forth. And so, compared to the last facility that we moved into, which was really starting from scratch, I just think this is very well out of the box, ready to move into for the most part.
Other questions?
One question, I don't remember what, I guess I never even heard the resolution of pavement cut on the top of Masonic Street. I noticed that gravel had been filled into that ditch, but it was an old utility excavation, I think done by Chatham Mills Development Corporation. But that remains unpaved. It has been re-gravelled, but it gets a lot of traffic. That may also need to be done. And then the parking lot, you know, all the paving for that building is almost 10 years old now, so it really needs restriping.
Okay.
And in areas where parking is more expansive, it becomes confusing and people are bridging parking spaces, so it diminishes the amount of parking that's available because the lines are invisible. I guess I just would like to say that this is a project, this Chatham Mill redevelopment, it's a project that I strongly support. I was on the founding board of the grocery store. I'm really pleased that Mr. Grusbeck, that you've found this and worked out this agreement. This is a tight, streamlined lease compared to what I've seen. I'm really eager and enthusiastic for this as a temporary measure.
I think most importantly, hopefully this doesn't turn into a blame or credit, I don't know which, but staff really pushed, I think, for this site in particular.
Great.
The windows are nice, I'm sure.
Lovely daylighting. Yeah, it's a very nice space in many ways. I'm also very glad that you're speaking about the maintenance and these concerns. Perhaps even maybe it should include a roof inspection.
Well, given that we don't have a meeting in December, should this then appear on the January agenda with respect to approval, or is the board prepared at this point to approve?
I'm ready. I think we could move to approve contingent upon the manager's as-is inspection.
I agree. I feel like that it's up to Mr. Grusbeck to figure out if it's suitable. What he's, that's right. That's that.
Well, I'd be interested in exploring some of the options that I mentioned.
Especially that CapEx. Yes, they could be.
Notice this is the third draft. Is this tweaking or was this substantive drafting? And I gather the Chatham Mills company has at least taken a look at this, or?
Yeah, I think I haven't changed much of anything except for a couple of typos and the address where it says to send to Town of Pittsboro, Mr. Brian Grusbeck. That's the only thing I've changed on this document. I think the other things that you mentioned are things that should be addressed in the as-is inspection. So I feel like if I'm not comfortable with how that resolves, then I don't think we have an agreement. So I would recommend that if we could just provide the authorization to execute when I'm comfortable with the as-is inspection. Because the timing is, as you mentioned, we don't have a meeting in December, and I think I'd like to keep this moving forward in terms of timing. And again, I'm not going to overcommit us to having to put in a new HVA system. I'm not going to do that if we're at risk. So.
Well, as to Mr. Fiocco's view that this needs to be 2 rather than 3, does the board feel that is something to pursue? Was the 3-year term suggested as a minimum by Leslie? No?
I'm personally comfortable with Mr. Grusebeck exploring these things and making a decision.
I mean, there's nothing to say that I couldn't find a mechanism and maybe work with Mr. Messick on finding a mechanism which allowed us the ability to work out of the agreement after 2 years. I think Mr. Roberts would be agreeable to that.
I mean, you can try to get it 2 years, but if we are not able to get it, it doesn't seem like a deal breaker.
I mean, he started off, just so you know, he started off with 5. And I felt like 3. I felt like 5 was too long of a commit. 3 seems like a pretty good number for some of the stuff that we have going on right now. But I can explore how we would plan on it.
3 years, really, that, I don't know how we're going to get any other property up and
Build
anything like 2 years. That would be nice.
It's possible. There's work being done towards that end.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Well, I think what it does is it keeps our options more open.
Right.
And I've got to believe that Tom would be amenable to 2-year lease with an option to extend. And that's what I think.
As long as you would extend 1 year, not 2 years.
That's right. I think he definitely wants people in his space, and especially credit for the tenants such as
make it a little
the
more
tenant.
reason on the 3rd year.
Well,
Lock in 3 years.
So is the board ready to vote on a generalized approval of the lease plan as it's presented with the upfits and the inspection of the common areas and the possible expiration of a 2-year rather than a 3-year lease?
with a modification to the HVAC clause of consent makers. Make that motion.
Second.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is a review of a resolution to change the authorized signatories for deposits and withdrawals from the bank account for the town of Pittsboro. I'm sorry. Setting of our date for the winter retreat. Mr. Grusebeck, did you get a survey monkey?
Yeah, I've gotten some responses back. I have to admit I haven't tallied or looked at all of those responses back yet. So, I mean, if you've seen the email, if you've gotten back to me, great. I can circle back with you guys and let you know what I'm finding out. If you haven't looked at it or if you haven't read the email, please read the email. If you don't feel like signing up for Survey Monkey, just give me a call and let me know when you're available or when you're not available. That's pretty much all I probably need to say about that.
It looks like it might be February before
Okay.
all of that can...
So it was the day, I don't remember what day it was, February 3rd or February 2nd. It was the day after the Super Bowl last year, so that's how I marked time, I think.
Probably should do that again.
I don't know, we spent the first 20 minutes talking about
and how we might not do this again.
Right.
Well, my only suggestion there would be we can use the data from your doodle, your
survey of our availability to look at a UDO date?
Well, yeah, like I kind of wanted to talk to Jeff a little bit about when he wanted to get the planning board together on that. We could send out a separate, after I can do that, we can do that tomorrow. And then either Jeff or I can send out another doodle nailing down that date, if that makes any sense.
I think you can use the same data.
Okay. Same, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I got it.
If it works out that the winter retreat works for the planning board, and we can all agree on that, that's a great time.
Well, I think you're saying a separate date even. We could use that same information for a separate date.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Because it's an expression of, at least in my case, and of my availability over the next 2 months.
I caught it.
Yeah.
And some of us have elected officials school during the month of February.
And he studiously avoided that.
Oh, good.
Yes.
So we'll wait and set that date based upon your communication.
We'll get back to that.
Okay. Now we're at the resolution. Change the signatories on the bank account. And we've been presented with the resolution. Is there any discussion or is there a motion?
Shall we fill in number 2 with Randall Baldwin?
Yes.
Make a motion that we approve the resolution designating the authorized signatories for withdrawals from depositories in the town of Pittsboro with the addition of Pamela Baldwin as Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
In favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion carries. Manager update and report.
We'll keep it brief. Want to welcome Mayor Perry and Commissioner Bonitz to the board. I'm very excited after some conversations, very excited to work with our new team members. And I think it's going to be, you guys are bringing a lot to the table, and so we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm very excited to start tackling that. I know staff is as well. The Affordable Housing Committee, you'll remember that the joint elected officials meeting back in November talked about the county manager and the town managers getting together to be informing the working committee, and we had that discussion last week, and we've agreed, I think, to seek some input from the Triangle J Council of Governments. There's a third-party consultant, too, that the county has worked with, and the county manager was going to circle back on that as well, and so we'll have more to report on that. But I think the meeting as a whole that I had with Renee and Brian was very productive in terms of getting a feel for what they had individually been working on, both from a county perspective and from Siler City's perspective. And certainly they were interested to hear what some of our travels brought forward. And, so there's definitely a lot more work to do on that. The master plan, the Chatham Park master plan, the additional elements. We had a meeting with Chuck Smith, Preston Development last week. The focus of the meeting was on the additional elements that are required by the master plan. I believe there's 12 or 13 of them, and so we had sort of an initial advantage of it. We're looking forward to presenting an outline of how we're tackling those elements based on this conversation, and probably some follow-up with Chatham Park at the January 11th meeting. So Jeff will have one of his fancy PowerPoints that will help us with that. Of course, tonight we had the Unified Development Ordinance presentation from Mr. Waldron, so we'll continue to move that forward, and we'll get back to you on when the joint meeting with the planning board and the town board will be taking place. The north side water system improvements, the elevated storage tank improvement issue. Mr. Royal is going to be meeting with the engineers from that project, and I believe that's going to be tomorrow. So we're going to have some plans that are what they're called 60% plans, and so we'll be taking a look at some of what some of our needs are in terms of that project, and where we're going to have a fit, and then we'll be looking forward, I think, to following up with that with some more formalization for how that would proceed as soon as we get the technical issue a little bit more formalized. And then finally, the wastewater inflow and infiltration. Fred's certainly willing to, I think, probably shed any more light on this if we've had any late-breaking news on it. But with the inflow and infiltration, or I&I project that we've had ongoing, Hydrostructures will be putting in the meters that we talked about at the previous meeting in the select locations and measuring the amount of water that's coming through some of those select locations to get an idea of what kind of actual stormwater infiltration is, to actually gauge scientifically how much infiltration we're getting into our sanitary sewer collection system from stormwater. And I think the timing on that, I don't know if they got them in today or tomorrow.
Today.
So were they able to register anything from the rain today, or so? Calling for more rain this week, so I believe they're going to be in there for 30 days. And so I would be shocked if we don't get rain within these next 30 days. If not, we'll see what we have to do from there. But
there were options to move them if we got sufficient data.
Yeah, we can leapfrog them on.
Yeah.
So that process continues, and with the end goal of making sure that we're not treating stormwater in our wastewater system, because that's expensive and it takes up capacity, and that's very bad. So with that, I'm ready to tap out.
Any questions for Mr. Griesbeck? Well, the mayor doesn't have any updates, except that one of the things I would like to discuss briefly are the committees that we all attend, and would like to sort of suggest that, you know, look out and see how many people have left. I think this is one of the most important things that happens on our agenda, and having the public know what it is that we're doing, whether we're attending EDC meetings or Pittsburgh Business Association or whatever. It seems to me, and I talked to Mr. Griesbeck about this, that if we could move it forward in the agenda, people would have a greater appreciation for what it is that the board does. Just, I mean, I'm not talking about anything exhaustive. I'm talking about just a sentence or two about, you know, that attended a particular meeting and the gist of it, or not even the gist of it, but I think the public needs to know that we're out there more often than the 2 monthly meetings a month. So EDC meets this week in special session to choose the new director, and with Diane leaving, and I understand that they're going to have that meeting this week for the choosing of the person to succeed her. And I'm not sure exactly what committees everybody serves on, so why don't you just chip in and...
Well, I'm liaison to the RPO and the PBA. Both meetings last week I missed, so I don't have an update, but Kitty is here she's vice chair of the PBA. Do you want to tell us anything, Kitty, about what I missed the last meeting?
Well, the Pittsburgh holidays I think has gone over really well. The tree lighting was a great success, and we really appreciate the town board and just everybody's police department and everybody that was involved getting us lights and directing traffic, and I think it was wonderful, and we really appreciate it. And we have the stand on trial coming up Saturday, which I think will be a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss it, but I think that the participation, again, from the town is just wonderful, and we really appreciate the board's work.
There are 2 of those shows, 2 and 6?
There are 2 and 6. And tickets are available all over town, so it is, you need a ticket.
Thank you, Kitty.
However, you think you said about the corporation. Triangle J will not be meeting this month due to the holidays resuming in January.
Well, I serve on some committees that aren't on this list. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, you want to know what we're all doing.
Yes.
I'd love to.
I'd love to.
Yeah, once you finish paying, we'll talk about the different things that you're doing.
I am on the steering committee of the YMCA. I am also a member of the Chatham Community Development Corporation Board of Directors, and then, of course, Triangle J Fairgrounds Association.
And I serve I'm Vice President of the Chatham Arts Council as a representative from the town. I serve on the, I've been a part of the Chatham Conservation Group that helps us with this proposal for the UDO. I also serve on the Affordable Housing Task Force at Building, but don't have to worry about that right now. Usually the meetings are when I'm at work, but I keep up through emails. Those are the three things that I like.
I guess you could say my committee is very limited. I pretty much as a backup for anybody that needs a hand. My plate is full.
I'd say running a business downtown is like, you know, and that's really valuable to have someone. And then the fire department,
Oh, yeah.
Those are huge.
Well, I might mention that thanks to all of the board members who are here now who did approve me for the Climate Change Committee. It has informally met kind of the founding members of that Chatham County Climate Change Committee, met to review the applicants. There was a great number of applicants, 14 altogether. The town of Pittsburgh has yet to appoint someone. So anyone who has connections with Pittsburgh, encourage them to appoint someone. And I believe that those names were, we reviewed them and we put forward a recommendation to the county commissioners. And I don't know where that stands now, but that's where that project stands. I also noted, as Beth Turner was leaving, that she was on the Solid Waste Advisory Board. And my first job out of college was as a solid waste manager and recycling coordinator for my alma mater, the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. So I would be very happy to serve on the SWAB Solid Waste Advisory Board. If no one else would care to do it.
You know, I think she mentioned that they quit meeting.
Yeah.
So I don't even know that they are meeting.
You may look into it and decide that everyone's
Happy to.
need to meet. It seems like we should, with all the growth that's going to come. It seems like we should.
That's what you want to do. We don't have a problem.
I mean, that does seem like one that we should look at, we should get going in.
Good to know.
I could either do an advisory committee about just wastewater needs or just
So were there additional commissioner concerns at this point?
I just want to throw out that, of course, I posted a lot of photographs from the Pittsburgh parade last night, and boy, we've already been viewed by over 5,000 people. It's amazing.
That's great.
The only feedback, most of it was very positive. The only two things that people mentioned was they want to see more marching bands from other schools, which I think is a great recommendation. I'd like to see that too. And the other thing that one person said was they were disappointed to see Santa on the back of a truck. They felt like Santa should be in a sleigh.
With reindeer.
I think we talked a little bit about that afterwards, and I think we need to come up with something. There was an original plan, like all plans, you know what happens, you know, the original plan sometimes, and so the backup plan was to use the classic car. The back of the classic car is the Santa sleigh. The classic car, of course, broke down in mid-parade. Literally broke down in the middle of the parade road. And so luckily we had the community police truck, and so Santa rode in the back of the police truck, and Nancy and I were talking today, and I think we're going to have to probably just come up with a Santa sleigh, either fashion out the Santa sleigh of some sort between now and then, and just be done with it. So you know, we don't have to spend, gads of money on it, I think.
It couldn't just be a float, like a float with Santa sitting on the back on it.
Right. Because this is the second year in a row, and if you recall, last year, Santa rode on a converted time machine, which was kind of neat, but it was a time machine first, and it's Santa sleigh second. I think we kind of upfit it to make a Santa sleigh, but we didn't, for whatever reason, have access to the time machine this year.
With the marching band, was that something that people just happen to sign up, or do we invite bands that were?
We invite them.
Okay.
But unfortunately, we only had the one band participated. But it was a huge. I mean, they had over 100 kids that were participating in marching. But we try to get as many bands as we can.
And what happened to the horses at the end? I always thought the horses, they just stopped.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We didn't. We had a really, it was kind of a strange year. I mean, we had a really late rush of entrants this year. I mean, for a long time, the number of entrants it was really trickling in slow, and then it was, right at the end, boom, the floodgates kind of opened, and we didn't get too many people showing up spur of the moment, but we got a few. So yeah, it was just kind of a, but and also too, before I apologize, I talked to Nancy had. I mean, you wouldn't believe. I mean, I interrupted a couple of times up front. She had some meetings on the staging area and the stepping off area, and I felt like I was interrupting a national security session or something like that. I mean, these guys were so organized with what they were doing, and they had everything mapped out, and it was just. And if you notice, there weren't really many gaps, if any, along the route.
Yeah.
It just everything just kept flowing. I think that's to Nancy and her team's credit.
That's the best one I've seen.
Yeah. It went really well, but yeah, it was just kind of I mean, every year is different, and I've been around parades for a little while now. And every parade year is it'll make you scratch your head sometimes. And yeah, marching bands were kind of I've heard it called a parade season. A lot of marching bands have to go to a lot of parades at this time of year, and so maybe that plays into it. But yeah, those suggestions are great, and I think they're things that we'll try to work on for next year.
That was a great Santa Claus.
Well, and we thought you'd gone over the top on the candy issue when we were loading it into our float, but it's a good thing. Cynthia Bland contributed another bag of candy.
Did you run out of candy?
We did.
Oh, wow. Because I think next year we should all save more together, because I think we were in 2 rows, and so we were each giving candy to the next
I think we need to consider the J factor, right?
Yeah.
Free candy, give it out.
I think Jay had a number of senior citizens request candy, and
They're voters.
And they're voters.
Yeah, I have a lot of seniors too, all ages, a lot of them. But that was really fun. It was a great time.
It was a great parade.
It really was. People had a good time.
The band was great behind the commissioners. I thought that was great.
I loved it.
That was great.
Oh, I got to say, I'm sad that I missed it, but I got an awful lot of visiting with family done, and we celebrated my birthday up in the mountains, and that was fun too. So.
Happy birthday. Thank you. Is there anything else to come before the board then?
I have one concern, or I'd like to volunteer. At the EDC meeting, the joint meeting, where this affordable housing committee was established, or it was suggested, there was the recommendation that some elected official be on that. And it's something that I'm very interested in and important to me, so I would volunteer to appoint, or be appointed, if you would like to.
Yeah, we do that now?
I'm just curious, because there is a group that meets, so I wonder if those 2 groups are going to together as a county group.
Okay.
I'd like to do that affordable housing also.
Okay.
I think it does kind of
Okay. Does the board feel disposed to appoint Pamela and Michael to the position that will be the intensive committee? Is this the...
Well, yeah, I mean, it has to actually form. There isn't a committee to appoint to, but once it does once it does get ready to meet, then if you guys want to have Commissioner Baldwin, Commissioner Field feel ready to go.
I just like to stay in the loop as I would. Have that many years on it, they have other sources.
Me too.
All right, does the board want to go ahead and vote on that tonight? That when the committee is formed, that Commissioner Fiocco and Commissioner Baldwin will serve on the committee?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Excellent. If there's no more business, then we'll adjourn until the second Monday in January. And happy holidays to everyone. We have a good motion to adjourn. Second.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem. Well,
No, you did
yeah, let's get together about dates.